So what is Bretton Woods? Well, Bretton Woods is a ski resort in New Hampshire, and on the eve of the victories in World War II, many of the victors got together and decided that some of the problems could be avoided if people sat down, created a forum in which they discussed how to coordinate policies in the international system. This conference led to many of the rules of the international system you understand and know today. Bretton Woods was an attempt to solve three problems that I've mentioned before. First is the rebuilding of war-torn countries. Now, prior to this, everyone agreed that the way in which Germany was treated after World War I was ineffective in preventing World War II. But the question was, well, how do you treat countries that are war-torn? How do you help them build economic models again to act as they should rather than as they did? Instituting reparations for war, they decided to create the World Bank. As I'll mention in the next couple of slides, the World Bank was responsible for helping states rebuild after war. After World War I, as I reviewed, Germany paid reparations to the UK and to France. This caused deep resentment in the German people and arguably contributed to the rise of the Nazi Party. So, after World War II, those at Bretton Woods thought the best way to do it is they could agree to launch specific aid packages to Germany as well as other states in Europe and Japan, and then to start the World Bank, so that after they got on their feet a little bit, the World Bank would be there to help them loan money to these countries so they might rebuild their economic markets completely. The IMF. The plan with the IMF and the original purpose of it was to monitor states to make sure they were not overprinting their currency. In essence, if you continue to overprint and then flood other people's markets with exports, you are hurting not only yourself in the long run, but you're hurting your neighbors. And so they wanted to talk about ways in which they can coordinate the currency values so this wouldn't happen anymore. And the Bretton Woods system is what it's called, would work this way, and the IMF would monitor these rules. First, the US dollar would be considered the world currency. Next, the U.S. would promise to keep its gold standard. Finally, all the other currencies in the world would then peg their currencies to the U.S. dollar. Thus, if the U.S. dollar was doing well, all of the others could raise their currencies. If the U.S. was going to print, they could print as well. If the U.S. was going to retract money or take money out of the system, they would need to do so as well. This would coordinate all the states in the world's currency values so that they would not be able to competitively devalue them. The IMF would then serve as the monitor to this regime. As I'll talk about in the next slide, in the next video, this only lasts into the 1970s, and that's why when you hear of the terms competitive devaluation today, you'll understand that we only did this for a little while, and then ultimately the U.S. decided that we no longer wanted to follow the rules that we had created at Bretton Woods. The third problem that was discussed at Bretton Woods is the reaction of Smoot and Hawley to increasing in tariffs that ultimately led the U.S. and Great Britain and France to stop trading with each other and ultimately decreased world trade by 66%. If they could agree to bring tariffs down, The United Kingdom and France saw that their profits were shrinking after World War I as well. So what they decided to do is to continue to overprint money. This actually decreases the cost of your exports. It makes them look more attractive and cheaper. So at a time where our economy was slowing, we were finding ourselves getting more and more goods from the UK and France, flooding our markets. After a while, we got to the point where we were so tired of our friends doing this to us that we created the Smoot-Hawley tariff. These gentlemen right here are Smoot and Hawley, senators from the United States Congress that decided to impose import taxes on all goods coming from our allies. Well, these import taxes were so high and so severe that they have been considered to be the highest tariffs in history. At Bretton Woods, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was agreed upon, GATT. What this suggested was that all states would get together on a regular basis in a forum and decide rules for what products would be considered to have free trade, where the tariffs would be abolished, and at what time period. Well, the GATT worked for several decades, and many states would get together on a regular basis in what were called rounds, Uruguay round, Tokyo round, and they would discuss which goods would no longer have tariffs upon them. Well, this worked very well, and in 1994 they decided that they needed the World Trade Organization to serve as a monitor to make sure states were following these rules, and when states weren't following these rules, the WTO would step in and try to resolve any disputes that occurred among states.